Sorry, there's a fighter jet flying over my house. I don't know
Oh,
if it's loud.
that's classic. I didn't hire them to try to underscore and make the point about how pervasive the military industrial complex is, but it is helpful. Welcome to War is Stupid, an anti war podcast about war. I'm excited. We have our first ever remote guest coming to us from Central Time, from Chicago. We have Danaka Katovich, the national co director of CODEPINK, and I'm going to let her tell us what that means.
Hi everyone. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be on and to talk about war being stupid. Always happy to do that with anyone. Code Pink is a feminist, transnational feminist organization, anti-war organization that was started in the lead up to the U.S. invasion of Iraq. So we've been around for a long time since I was literally a toddler. So Code Pink's been around my entire life, and it's really surreal to me that I'm helping lead the organization in 2025, but we're doing a lot of work around the genocide in Gaza, do a lot of work around anti-sanctions, the good neighbor policy for Latin America. So we've spanned a lot of issues over the 20 years, so I'm excited to talk more broadly about our work.
Yes, so on this podcast, we're breaking down the myths used to justify war. And I'm 31. My childhood was also in the shadow of the war on terror. And now, here we go, 22 years after the aforementioned invasion of Iraq. Did it work? Did war liberate women? After 20 years of violence and occupation, did it succeed? Are the women's lives there better now thanks to military intervention?
Nope.
Right? Like, no one ever
Yeah.
stops to ask whether or not it works. Like, earlier this summer, we had the war in Iran. And so that was just a fun second episode, not even changing anything, changing none of the propaganda, only changing one letter in the name. So yeah, what are the impacts of war on
Yeah.
women?
Yeah, it's interesting you said that no one ever refers back to the propaganda used to see if it's actually seen follow through. Because, that's one of the reasons Code Pink exists is because in the lead up to the war and invasion of Afghanistan, particularly, but also, it was a talking point in Iraq as well, was the women there need to be liberated from, the Taliban. And U.S. invasion and war will do that. Like, we will liberate women in Afghanistan. And obviously, no, it hasn't worked. And I think the reason people don't circle back to it 20 years later is because they never really cared in the first place. That's not actually why they had an interest in deploying U.S. military force abroad. Actually, this came up recently in a conversation I had. We were having a back to school supply drive in Chicago, and it was in a park, so I went up to some of the parents and I was like, if your kids need anything, we have way too much than we could take to the distribution site and the cars we have available, so whatever your kids need or want for their school year, please come swing by and grab stuff. And it was fun watching the kids come by and pick out their markers and whatnot. And one of the dads comes up to me and he's like, oh, I love this. This is so cool. I'm so glad you guys are here doing it. And we also educate on Palestine at those events. We talk about, there are plenty of kids not going back to school this year. And here are the reasons why. And this dad was like, I love what you're doing. This is so cool. What organization are you with? And I said, Code Pink and Palestinian Feminist Collective. And as soon as I said the word Palestinian, he visibly was revolted seemingly with what I'd said. And he said, see, I disagree with that. I said, wait, what? I just listed organizations. I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, how do you reconcile being a feminist organization while when Hamas treats women so badly? And just, a perfect through line from early war on terror language to this moment. I was like, I've trained my whole life for this.
All right, yeah. Lock in, what did you say?
I said, well, I think the largest purveyor of violence against women in Gaza is the Israeli military. Over half of the victims of this genocide have been women and their children. So I think, in the hierarchy of needs, that a human, I support a woman's right to be alive. Yes. I support a woman's right to have a house that isn't bombed to rubble, to have a neighborhood that isn't bombed to rubble. I support a woman's right to go to can I curse on this podcast?
Oh, please do. No? Yeah.
I support a woman's right to go to a fucking hospital if she needs to go to a hospital. What hospitals are fully operating in Gaza? None. And it's because the Israeli military. I didn't, scream at him like that because I was trying to be measured and trying to change his mind. But I explained the hierarchy of needs, but it just, and that wasn't good enough for him. And he kept going out. He pulled up the women argument to have a gotcha at me. He doesn't actually care about Palestinian women because he believes in their extermination. Right. If he supports the current government and assaults that Israel is carrying out every single day, if he can make justifications for genocide, then I don't think he actually cares about women. Thus, if 20 years later... Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Or do women have a right to exist? Like, there's so many big theoretical questions when, at the end of the day, people are dying and they shouldn't be. That's what we should be concerned with. You can't be liberated if you're dead. No, and just, I think a more important thing to analyze is what are the intentions. And I think for early on, hopefully we've gotten smarter as a society since the early 2000s. But I think people could see clear as day that the U.S., who is constantly having a debate on women's reproductive rights, might not care about women that they are also racist towards. Yeah, and even in, there's, statistics I could name and that sort of thing, but I think when it comes down to it, it's, and it goes back to why CODEPINK exists in the first place, is feminist organizations in the U.S. were wholeheartedly buying into the propaganda that somehow a war in Afghanistan, an occupation of Afghanistan, was going to liberate women from the Taliban. But what has happened since then, right? The U.S. occupied Afghanistan for 20 years. When it pulled out, it created so much chaos. The Taliban retook Kabul in a matter of days. And the immediate response was, because the U.S. has said, this isn't worth us being there anymore, admitting that they were never there for women in the first place, I guess, if the Taliban can retake Kabul in a matter of days. And also what happened directly after also proves that they didn't care about women, because the U.S. froze Afghanistan's assets, billions of dollars, money that funds public services, transportation, hospitals, healthcare, things that fund things that women need every single day, domestic violence shelters that existed in Kabul. So they froze all that money. They tried to give it to the 9/11 victims' families. After we spent 20 years, it just doesn't make any sense. A zero-sum game, yeah.
And then U.S. groups that were funding domestic violence shelters in Afghanistan pulled their money out because now the Taliban was in charge and they didn't want to be giving money to the Taliban. So I just think it's never about an actual care for women, but it's about sifting through the propaganda when it comes on. That's really important, and that's why more feminist organizations that are explicitly just feminist organizations really need to take on war as a topic. Because if you care about women, you have to care about women everywhere. Because if the U.S. government and the Israeli government is willing to do this to women and children there, they are setting the stage for attacks on anyone. If we let them get away with that, what are they going to get away with down the line? And I think that was also the case with Afghanistan and Iraq.
It's been an interesting time to be involved in anti-militarist organizing, because now we're seeing federal troops and tanks on the streets of LA and DC. So it's getting even harder to distance ourselves from what war actually looks like. It's not the Steven Spielberg movie we were told. Like,
Yeah.
how has your work changed under Trump 2.0? Because they're selling us that bombs liberate women, when also the Secretary of Defense literally just shared a video that said that women don't have the right to vote, and he's in charge of the U.S. military. They still want us to take them seriously.
Yeah, no, it's a bunch of hypocrisy, and I think, at the end of the Biden administration, we were facing like a level of repression, and now we're seeing, Trump completely overhaul municipal police forces, which is scary and insane. And I think that's a direct response to public opinion changing. Like, they are grasping at straws because they know that the people aren't going to be on their side for much longer. There's been massive shifts in public opinion, specifically on Gaza, in the last number of weeks. And I don't think they either have to shift their political stance on Israel and, do what the people are asking them to do, arms embargo, completely isolate Israel from the rest of the world until they stop the genocide, or crack down. And they're choosing to crack down because there's a lot of money to be made in weapon shipments to Israel. There's a lot of vested interest in members of Congress supporting Israel. So I think that's the response that we're seeing to them, to public opinion really radically changing in the last year or so.
So it's a sign of weakness, not of strength, the fact that they're sending federal agents to Georgetown, home of Georgetown cupcakes. Like, it's a wild sizzle reel for Trump's chauvinistic, like, everything is TV. And it's also an interesting demonstration of allocations of resources.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something we talk about a lot at CODEPINK, is we have the Cut the Pentagon coalition and campaign, where we talk specifically about what we could afford if we didn't spend $1 trillion on war and militarism. The Trump administration, or Congress, when it gets back into session, is going to finish working on their fiscal year 2026 Pentagon budget, which will be probably over $1 trillion when it comes down to it. It includes funding for the Golden Dome, which is essentially a replication of Israel's Iron Dome system, but it would be for the United States, which is just a boondoggle, like a complete waste of money that is going to be pervasive for the next probably 3 decades or so, while they pay Lockheed Martin or whoever they're contracting to build this thing. Meanwhile, they're cutting food stamps and they're cutting Medicaid. So yeah, it is definitely an imperial boomerang moment. Is we're helping bomb hospitals and then we're defunding the hospitals here. Like, the austerity knows no bounds, I don't think.
Yeah. What is your origin story? Like, how did you cut through the propaganda? What was your gateway war to realizing that the status quo is unjust and unsustainable?
Yeah, I think there's like a moment I often point to when I talk about this, and it's my freshman year of high school. When I was 14, my mom died really suddenly, and she was my only working parent, because my dad stayed home because I have a disabled brother that needed constant care and needed someone home at all times. And because she was my only working parent, we got our health care through her. And she died like at the end of the month, like towards like a few days before the end of the month she died in. And the last day of the month, we got a letter saying that our health insurance was ending. And I think that was my first time realizing how, I think your parents protect you from some of the precarity that capitalism imposes on families. Like, I didn't understand how complicated it was for my brother to get his benefits. until later. I didn't understand that entire families could just be kicked off health insurance. It's not something I was really aware of until that moment. And, you know, just seeing in the face of, like, I live in the richest country in the history of the world. Like, why is my disabled brother being kicked off of health insurance? And, you know, luckily he was able to get on Medicare. Yeah, Medicare is the one for old people and disabled people, I think. So he was able to get on Medicare. I had to get, like, private insurance that was, like, so expensive, and my dad was so stressed out about it for such a long time. And it was around the same time Bernie came into the political sphere and, like, excited a bunch of young people, and he said a lot of things about war. It's like, we spent $1 trillion on the war on terror, and what did it get us? And we've really, like, shaped our entire economy in the U.S. around killing people. It's really remarkable almost how centered everything is around war since World War II. As soon as, like, rich people learned that they could make money off of starting wars, keeping wars going. I remember after Russia invaded, or right before Russia invaded Ukraine, there's a lot of tension in Eastern Europe leading up to the invasion. And one of the CEOs or some executive at Raytheon said in a board meeting, "We will expect great benefit from this."
Oh my gosh. Not even pretending.
Yeah, and so I think, you know, losing my health insurance was a big part of it. Bernie Sanders was, like, a big part of it. And my brother was also deployed to Iraq in 2003. Wow. So my oldest brother, I have two brothers. So my oldest brother was actually deployed and was in the Marines. And watching him come, like, I didn't really understand what was going on. I was 3 or 4 years old. And, it's like you watch people come home from the military and I think my brother specifically was like, we were lied to, and that's why I was there. And that's something I, like, literally cannot shake off for the rest of my life. That I was there under these, like, false pretenses, and then 1 million people died. 1 million people were killed. And so, like, watching, him and, like, struggle, I mean, it's difficult, and realizing that, like, we should have never been there. And it's crazy to work for an organization that was resisting my brother being deployed in the first place. Trying to prevent that from happening is a lot of why I do what I do now, I think.
Yeah, wow, that's very powerful. And it's interesting, something that Bernie brought to the scene was, I feel like, just imagination at all. I feel like everyone has just a complete lack of imagination. The whole purpose of centrism is to say that no, things can't get better, making such changes are impossible. So what is the vision of the just world, the peace economy that CODEPINK is working towards, and what alternatives can they offer? Because a lot of people don't understand the fact that they're just because things are the way they are doesn't mean it's the way they have to be.
I know, and I've been thinking about this a lot, actually, because when we center our economy around building weapons, shipping weapons, exporting weapons, occupying places, private military contracting, like, on purpose, weapons companies put factories in every single congressional district. So when they lobby members of Congress, they could say, well, I have jobs in your district. Are you really going to vote against weapons? That means you're voting against your constituents having jobs.
God damn it, that's genius. That's so insidious.
Unfortunately, these war criminals are very smart people.
Yeah,
I know people call them, like, goofy dumbasses, but they're actually really intelligent and manipulative narcissists. So, I don't know. What happens when an economy centers itself around war and imperialism, which is, I think, the natural outcome of having a capitalist economy, I think it really wears down people's spirits.
Yeah.
You know, I talk to people, I've been all over the Midwest talking to people about war and imperialism. And eventually in that conversation you get to like capitalism and talking about how it does not serve people's needs because it's not meant to. And I think some responses I get is, well, this, you know, I'll talk about my imagination for a better world, and they'll say things like, well, that's just sort of idealistic. And I'm like, people being able to go to the hospital?
Yeah. Wow. Dream big. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I know. So it's, you know, it harms people's psyches, like keeping people buried in debt, keeping people buried in bureaucracy, having to fill out 20 forms to justify that, yes, they indeed deserve food stamps so they could feed their 4 children. It's all on purpose to, like, really beat people down to... They're so busy they cannot even begin to ask the question, what if I deserved better? Because I am human. And the war economy really damages your psyche in that way. Capitalism really damages your psyche and your imagination. And we've been talking about the People's Forum is doing a summer school for socialism, and this past week they talked about because radical imagination is critical, I think, in movement building. We can't just be, I'm against war, I'm against imperialism, I'm against genocide, I'm against war profiteering. Being against something isn't enough. We have to be for something. Like, the movement has to give people hope in some way. So if we're against war, then what are we for? And, you know, CODEPINK's stated purpose is to educate people on divesting from war and imperialism and reinvest it into things that are life-affirming, like healthcare, housing, education, etc. And it's important to, like, think tangibly. Like, I think free healthcare is a big idea, and people are, you know, privy to it now. I think generally free healthcare is really, really popular in the United States. With things like, what if abortion wasn't even up for discussion? What if your bodily autonomy wasn't even up for discussion? Like, there is a world that exists out there where it is not a constant debate happening whether you have bodily autonomy or not. There's a world down the line where you're not arguing that you're so poor that you have a right to feed your children using food stamps. Like, there's a reality where you are not housing insecure, where you're not worried about not being able to afford rent at the end of your lease if your landlord decides to raise your rent. There is a tangible reality in where the basic things that you need are not up for debate. Think about how much anxiety is induced by things like grocery prices, rent prices, finding housing in a place that has 16 empty housing units per unhoused person. That's the reality in the United States right now. Why are people freaking out about not being able to find a place to live? That is ridiculous. And so we really have to, we do have to emphasize what our imagination is and, the tangible things that would actually make people feel better about being alive, because, existence can tend to be a little bit miserable these days.
Yeah.
So.
And how do we get there? I think naming and shaming, for starters, the first way to fix a problem is by acknowledging that it is a problem. But what are some tangible things people can do, either in their families or in their communities, to try to avoid some of the aforementioned misery?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of war and, support for Israel, I think we've seen this public opinion shift because people have been loud about it. Miss Rachel, the children's YouTuber,
yes,
has been posting a lot on social media, and she's like, if you're famous and you haven't said anything, just say something. It actually works and changes minds. And I think so. People talking directly to the people around them about this is really important, and the whole vision as a whole, of course. That's how minds are changed, and that's because like we have to have a popular opinion to be able to have a movement. You have to have a movement to be able to tangibly, uh, you know, turn things over and change things from, uh, in like a revolutionary way. So I would say talking to people, then building a container of some sort, having an organization, being part of an organization, is sort of the next step. But those are the next two I see logically.
So the way militarism, feminism is used as cover for militarism is twofold. It's both we need to go to war to liberate women, and what could possibly be more empowering than a woman being the one to drop the bomb. So what do you find empowering if not ending lives and wreaking havoc on communities?
Ooh, what do I find empowering? It's a good question. I think honestly, every time I organize in person, in Chicago, I'm empowered that, more people are coming out, that we oftentimes try and frame our events here and like to attract people, like to attract new people who might not be familiar with our work at all, might not be even familiar with our issues at all. Like that's why we have, mutual aid projects in the city. And so we do meet people that might not understand what's going on. And I think every time I talk to a new person and make some sort of inroad, I feel empowered. Because if there's some big change coming in society, then, at least more people need to be ready for it and enthusiastic about it. So I think anytime I organize in person, I feel really empowered. And also just seeing shifting political opinion, where people are becoming more amenable to our issues, and being anti-war is huge. And I will say, I think generally after the war on terror, Americans were pretty anti-war. I feel like a few years ago, most people were like, "No, we don't want to be involved in anything." But then as soon as a new wave of propaganda comes, it's like they've changed their mind. I don't know.
Right, but yeah, that's something that's so frustrating, and also the fact that people involved in making those bad decisions never faced consequences for them and are quite literally still in power right now. So I feel like, does CODEPINK do any work with trying to bring war criminals to justice, or what does your electoral strategy work like trying to get the people who make the bad decisions out of power? Are you involved in fielding and promoting candidates?
No, we don't, because we're a 501c3, so we don't do any electoral stuff. I think our stuff with people in power mostly centers around the masses. Like, we're trying to educate the masses on who these people are and how they're not doing their job. Like, they're supposed to represent you. They're not doing that. Most Americans don't want to ceasefire, and all these members of Congress are like traveling to Israel and taking selfies with Benjamin Netanyahu. So they're very out of touch, and that's something we educate on. And we do talk about accountability a lot, because you're right. These things are allowed to keep happening because Cheney is not in prison.
Right. And the fact that Henry Kissinger got to...
Yeah.
Got to live to 100?
I know. The fact that the Cheney and Bush are not in The Hague is insane, for lying and then getting 1 million people killed. So we do have accountability work. You'll see, when these war criminals do their book tours, CODEPINK sometimes is present there, getting on stage, reminding attendees about what they're doing. We have, disruptions and that sort of thing.
Yes, you guys are amazing at bird docking. If you haven't yet, check out their social media pages, and you'll see, Medea Benjamin being a gadfly for members of Congress. Do you have any, like, in the trenches stories of approaching electeds?
Yeah, I was the first one to disrupt Joe Biden after the genocide started.
Oh, shit. Okay, set the stage. That is a powerful story. Yeah.
Yeah, so this was in November of 2023. It was the day after or the day of that the death count reached 10,000.
Oh my God.
Everyone was like, this is insane that the death count's 10,000 already. It was either the day of or the day after. We heard that Biden was speaking at, it was like in CODEPINK and then in collaboration with Palestinian organizers in the Chicagoland area who like flagged us for the event. And we worked with them to find the event and where it was. He was speaking at a UAW event because they were reopening a factory in near Rockford. I don't think it was Rockford though. I'm blanking on the city right now, but it was like down south a little bit in Illinois. We drove there. I had the flu. I was like deathly ill. I was so sick. I had a fever. I was on max amounts of Dayquil to get through it. And I was scared as shit. I was so afraid. And I walked into the event. I just walked in there. It was really small. And I don't know, a few minutes into him starting to talk, the demand at the time was ceasefire. That was the demand. And people had just started, calling it a genocide, which is almost 2 years ago now. And it was a small room. It was, I don't know, maybe 300 people. I was I made eye contact with him when I started yelling from the crowd. And I said something along the lines of, President Biden, you need to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. 10,000 people have been killed in 1 month. I just remember repeating. I kind of blacked out, I feel like, so I only remember from watching the video.
Sure, yeah.
As soon as I said you have to call for a ceasefire in Gaza, everyone started booing me.
Oh.
People were booing. The women in front of me, you could see in the video, they try and grab me, and they say, this is not the time. This is not the time for that. And I just repeated as they were saying that to me, I just kept repeating, half of them are children, half of them are children. And this was also right after Israel gave the orders to evacuate all of northern Gaza. And I just said, where are they supposed to go? It's the largest open-air prison in the world. Where are they supposed to go? And that's when I started getting, pulled out of the room. And everyone was just some guy at the end of the video calls me a psycho bitch. They're booing me. They're, all screaming at me. In the moment, honestly, I felt like I couldn't hear them. I couldn't hear what they were... I was, so locked in on what I had to say. And then I was kicked out, and that's kind of it.
So what you're saying is it's actually not that hard. It's not that hard to get in the room with the President of the United States.
I was surprised how easy. I was like, really? I was let to just walk in. I think I got lucky. I found a window where they weren't really paying attention or something, but yeah, it was really strange.
Yeah, how do you cope with the bad faith? If we take a second to zoom out, and do people realize what they're booing? That what they're booing is a cessation of killing. What they're booing is stopping the killing of children. That's what Miss Rachel does so well, is humanize things, because there's billions of dollars in propaganda to get us to not see Palestinians as human. But other than the moral confidence of, knowing that you're doing the right thing, how do you cope with all that negativity? Because I'm new to it, and there are some days where I need to be reminded like that there are at least like maybe like 7 good people in the world. Like it could be very, very overwhelming.
I think the hardest part is when it's like people close to me. But that hasn't happened too much. I feel like a lot of my family and friends who weren't about it have really come about it in the last year or so. I mean, people are like there are members of my family who were really upset when I yelled at Biden.
Oh wow.
It was strange, but after a while, it's like I was right all along, or told you so moment. So sometimes that helps. But when it's like other people, it's mostly just the moral confidence, I think, for me. Also, I'm Muslim. I'm pretty spiritual, so I'm like, well, I really kind of only care what God thinks about me. Like, can I justify what I've done on Judgment Day? Yeah, then I'm good. I don't really care what this bot on Twitter is saying about me in my DMs. Like, I really don't care. So, I think most of it's moral confidence and just being surrounded by people who kind of do share the same values as me.
Yeah, for a lot of people, we've talked about how, portrayal of Muslims is almost exclusively negative. So now that we're on camera with a microphone, like what do you want people to know? It's unfair that you have to be put in a position to defend the existence of billions of people in the world, but like what do you want to see, or what do you wish people knew?
I don't even know. That's a hard question. I think just I don't know, when that guy was talking to me at the mutual aid distribution, and he was like, Hamas treats women really bad. Like, I knew he would have said that even if Hamas wasn't in power. I could kind of tell his undertone. He was I could tell that no matter who was in charge in Gaza, he would have said women there are treated really bad, because he probably has preconceived notions about, Arab men, specifically Muslim men, probably on a larger scale. Because a lot of Americans do. Unfortunately, and I think a lot of Islamophobia is quite racialized towards Arabs because of the war on terror. But I don't know, like, we're just regular people. I got nuanced people like everyone else in the world. Like, I don't really know if I have anything interesting to say about it though.
No, that's great. It's interesting, the fact that it's not interesting. Like, people just want to live. That is something that's just so missing from our discourse, is the fact that at the end of the day, we all just want the same things. To go to the hospital, if there's a hospital still there. To get to raise a family, if the family's still there.
And also, it's just, they talk about, like, women's safety in, like, predominantly Muslim countries, or, like, they talk about, like, as if the United States is, like, the beacon of women's safety. And I just wish they would acknowledge that, like, this guy probably has a wife who can't, like, walk around at night because she's scared of what might happen to her. I was walking around, like, Palestine at, like, 2 a.m, literally not a fear in my heart. Like, it wasn't even, like, I was not scared at all. I cannot emphasize this. It was one of the safest places I've ever been as a woman. And same for, like, places like Cuba. I only, like, out of all my travels, I've kind of only felt unsafe in the United States as a woman.
That's so interesting. Yeah, have you gotten to travel as part of your movement work? Like, where have you been?
I've only been to Cuba as part of CODEPINK. I went to Palestine separately, so I've only been to Cuba. I don't think I've traveled anywhere else.
Oh, but that's amazing. Yeah, what surprised you, or what was your main takeaway
from Cuba?
Yeah.
That the U.S. needs to lift the blockade that it has on Cuba immediately. Like, it was just devastating to see the impacts of the blockade. And I was there in 2022 before it got really bad. It's gotten worse as of late, I think. So, ending the blockade. There's also a really vibrant and amazing Muslim community there that I got to spend Eid with while I was there, and that was really, really special. I think the Cuban government is doing the best with the resources it has for its people, and even just, people talk about how, like, communists hates like communists hate religion or whatever is like something people say, but I was like with the Muslims there in Havana. Sorry, there's a fighter jet flying over my house. I don't know if it's loud.
That's classic. I didn't hire them to try to underscore and make the point about how pervasive the military-industrial complex is, but it is helpful.
Yeah, can you hear it?
I do, yeah, that's wild. A fighter jet? Really?
Yeah.
That's so
the
interesting.
Air and Water Show is this weekend in Chicago, so they're doing test flights over my freaking apartment.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's funny, like, that's a form of entertainment. Like, one person's worst nightmare is another person's entertainment.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, too, because, I'd been talking to people in Gaza over the span of this genocide, and I would hear drones flying over them, fighter jets flying over them, and just to, like, have me be here and hearing fighter jets, like, all I can think about is, like, people in Gaza who've been hearing this every day for 2 years, and instead of every time it flies over, I, like, make a dumb joke, but for them, it's like, they might be killed, and it's a real part of life there. It just, it breaks my heart, but yeah, people are gonna go out in Lake Michigan and, like, watch these pilots wave their planes around and have fun. It's just kind of, a little bit tone deaf, I think, at this point.
Yeah, Tom Cruise's power between Scientology and Air Force propaganda. I'd love to hear about your experience in Palestine. Where did you go?
I was in Jerusalem for almost all of it. So I spent a lot of time in East Jerusalem, which is, the Palestinian part. Also the Christian quarter, which is also predominantly Palestinian. The Muslim quarter, of course. I got to see Al-Aqsa, which is what I was doing. I was doing a research project there for my art history class. So it was like, I was there for 2 weeks. And I was, like, presenting on my research about the architecture, because it's quite, it's the third holiest site in Islam, and it's changed hands multiple times, so a lot of different empires have added their adornments, and you can clearly see, like, different architectural influences on the building itself, which is just really, you could see it's like a time capsule on who was there when. It's really, really special. So that's what I was doing there. Visited the mosque and learning about old architectural sites. So, but talking to the people, like I said, I've never felt safer than walking around. We got there at, like, midnight. Me and my professor just, like, walked around at 1 a.m. and walked to East Jerusalem walked through East Jerusalem, and there's no issues. Like, it was just beautiful, except for when Israelis came out with guns. That was scary, but
yeah, to tie things back to how we kicked off this conversation, like, liberating women at gunpoint is both impossible on its head, and also it doesn't solve problems, it exacerbates problems, the weaponry and the power dynamics.
Yeah, and also, it's like the direct effects of bombs that kill women, that kill their access to healthcare, housing, and education, and those sorts of things. Like, they're like, oh, women deserve to go to school. How are women supposed to go to school in an active war zone? That doesn't make any sense in the case of Afghanistan. But it also, You know, we talk about like women and children a lot, but also like I at least know a few men in my life that I would be devastated to lose. And you know, Palestinian men are like the main target of Israel's assault. Fathers, brothers, really close friends of people who make communities whole. And I think attacks on men also hurts women. It affects their access to, you know, if they're like a stay-at-home mom taking care of the kids, they lose their only access to income, perhaps. So I think that has to be emphasized as well. And just the emotional toll that war takes on women is devastating. And also, war, in almost every scenario, in every case throughout history, has escalated sexual violence against women. Sexual violence is really pervasive in war zones, and women are less protected from it.
On both sides, in the military and among civilians.
Like in remote places where U.S. military bases have been set up. Like, war is not even happening, but cases of sexual violence spike for the locals. For the local women there. It's, you know, the war machine, the U.S. war machine is a mass manufacturing line for women's misery everywhere, I think.
And it's hard, but I do want to try to end on a positive note. So, yeah, what could possibly be positive that we want to send people off after listening to this podcast, watching it, folding their laundry, feeling motivated and prepared to help join the fight and build a better world. So what's your kickoff?
Yeah. I would say remember that repression is only increasing because they are scared about the will of the people. They're really scared that public opinion is shifting against them. And I would just watch videos of these members of Congress coming home this month and doing town halls. This one town hall in Wisconsin, this member of Congress said Israel has the right to defend itself, and everyone booed.
Oh my gosh.
In Wisconsin. So the times are changing. That's why repression's happening. But still, resisting now will be much easier than resisting later. So the sooner you can do something, the sooner that you can take action and speak out, the better. Because it might only get harder as the repression increases. But remember, you are not doing it in isolation. The people around this country are mostly with you now, which is not something that we could say even a year ago. So,
excellent. And how can people find you if people want to read your writing or get in touch and join your chapter of Code Pink?
Yeah, please go to codepink.org. We have all of our chapter information there. You can join a chapter, get involved locally or virtually. My writing is on Danaka, my first name, DANAKA.substack.org or something.com, I think. Please check out my Substack. I write a lot, and also Code Pink has a really great Substack where a bunch of authors write really good pieces about war and imperialism. I write about the Midwest and then also war and imperialism. So, and then I'm Wife of Toast on Twitter and Code Pink on Twitter.
Oh, that's great. Wife of Toast, what's the origin story? Is Toast?
My tweet got posted in like a article, and I didn't want people following me from the article, so I changed my name. It was just like the quickest thing I could think of.
That's so funny.
Yeah, but then it changed in the article too, so it was kind of useless, but we move.
But excellent. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing and for taking the time to come talk to this small pod, literally just me in my bedroom. So I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was great to meet you, and thanks for having me on.
Of course. Thank you for listening and or watching. War is Stupid, an anti-war podcast about war. Please subscribe, rate and review. Tell your dads. We'll see you next time.